welcome Vijay Sharma ma'am in this last technical session of the 3-day international conference on translation and the global. And I welcome you, ma'am, because we have taken you as our very own, and that is why this session will be done under you, because lot many students and young people are around, and we thought that you will be the best person to mentor them on this technical session. And to the paper presenters who are here, I would like to introduce ma'am in 2-3 lines, because we don't have much time. I know that she is a prolific writer and excellent translator, and she has been credited to bring world literature to Hindi readers. And she's being continuously, invited these days for her talks in the national and international forum. So we are very happy and proud to have you, Vijay Mama. And Basudhara, you can proceed further. And I also welcome paper presenters Karim City College conference, that they have taken a pain and they have written a paper and have chosen this platform to come and attend and present whatever they want to say on different topics. Basudhara, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. We welcome Vijay ma'am once again. And I think there is an echo problem.
Yeah.
So I welcome Vijay ma'am once again to this session. And as Neha ma'am rightly pointed out, she has been one of the pride, we have been very proud to belong to the same city as Dr. Vijay Sharma. And she's with us today. And we would like, now we had sent out an announcement last night to all the technical session presenters who had missed out in the presentations in the first 4 technical sessions. So I believe many of them have joined us. What we will do is we will begin with the scheduled presentations. And then, once we have done with the scheduled presentations for this afternoon, we will go back to find out if there are people, who have missed out their presentations and who are willing to present today. So we will begin with the first presenter of the afternoon, who is Shraddha Jha, who is a postgraduate student from the Department of English, Banaras Hindu University. And Shraddha's topic is study of the extent to which retelling Indian epics in English translation can be attainable. I would request all participants once again to remember that you have 4 minutes allowed for your presentation. Please try to summarize and conclude your basic research ideas in these 4 minutes. Thank you. Over to you, Shraddha.
Thank you, ma'am. So, a very good afternoon to everyone present here in this session today. The topic of my presentation is a qualitative study of the extent to which retelling Indian epics in English translation can be attainable. Now, why did I choose myths and epics? Because myths shape the thought of a people, and very often they are transmitted orally through native languages. Now, translation is not just translating the right words, but also translating the inward experiences. And hence, when the epic, which is based on tradition, is passed on in native languages, there lies a question whether can be translated or not. The primary text that we are looking at in this discussion will be Yagnaseni by Pratibha Ray, translated by Pradeep Bhattacharya into English. A word about the text. The story of Yagnaseni is the story of the Mahabharata from Draupadi's point of view. Women are marginalized characters in all epics which talk more about the grandeur of men. Yet in this novel, Yagnaseni or Draupadi is the protagonist. And Draupadi is an epitome of supreme sacrifice and endurance. Yet she is the most misunderstood heroine of the epic. Her name bears a stigma, and she's considered as a woman who brought the greatest war of all times. The very first word of the novel is finis. Finis meaning sakha or friend. The question is, why doesn't the author translate the very first word of the novel? Because how many words do you find in English for a woman who is a friend and is supposed to be the closest relation that one can have? Hence, the first word establishes that the story of Draupadi will be narrated in Draupadi's own language. And there are some culture specific words which are not understood apart from the culture. If I talk about deep blue to you, you can understand it only because there is a word for it in English. Hence, language also shapes how you experience things. And therefore, pranaming and pranamed are definitely foreignization and homogenization of the words, but you cannot translate these words. The word sati has no assigned gender in Hindi, but in English, it translates as women of chastity. Why women? Because chastity is a quality which is associated with celibacy, yet it is always associated with virginity. And therefore, Pradeep Bhattacharya insists that we do not equate virgin and chaste. The maleness of English language can cause a problem because there are more words for males than females in English, and mostly these words are positive. But the moment you associate them with negative, associate them with women, they assume negative connotations and they become highly sexualized. For example, the word Trishna is translated as thirst or desire, which can have sexual connotations. The word Kanya translates to virgin, but virgin in Hindi means a girl, and in English it is used for implying that women implying that women and virginity decide whether the woman is chaste or not. The maleness of English language can cause hermeneutical injustice, which is the lack of concepts and terms that can allow women to communicate their experiences. For example, the words which talk about sexual harassment or menstruation are very few. And in chapter 28 of Yagniseni, where the Draupadi's Vastraharan is the context, the words rape, abduction, and misbehavior have been used to describe such a catastrophic crime. There is double marginalization because in the word Shyam, the word in Hindi means dark, and that's all. But in English, the author has imposed the word dark beauty. Why does he have to impose beautiful on the word dark? Because it might not be understood in Hindi English the same way as it is in Hindi. A male translation can be inappropriate because critics argue that males and females do not view the world identically. Hence, reframing or the personal voice of the translator can be heard. For example, the Odia text does criticize the disastrous decisions of the males in the epic, but on the contrary, the English translation defends these decisions. Simon de Beauvoir calls this cutting and editing marks of sexist authoring. In conclusion, I would like to say that the purpose of translation is to cross the borders of one's own country and become universal. But translations of an epic are not fully attainable because of the differences in cultures and because there is always a lurking danger of gendered translations. Hence, I would like to quote Spender here, who says, there is sexism in language. It does enhance the position of males, and males have had control over the production of cultural forms. Thank you.
Thank you, Shraddha, for timing your presentation so well. Over to the chairperson for her comments.
Shraddha and everybody, good afternoon. And thank you for introducing me here. Shraddha, your paper I liked very much. And it is true. Translation is the bridge between two languages and two cultures. And it is very difficult to translate one culture into another culture because language is related with culture. So you are very much right. Happy.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shraddha. We move over to the next presenter, Mandeep Kaur, who is a research scholar at Arka Jain University, Jharkhand. And the topic of her paper is the history of translation. Mandeep, over to you. Please, a time of 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. My topic is the history of translation. The history of translation has been a topic that has long been debated by scholars and historians, though it is widely accepted that translation predates the Bible. The Bible tells of different languages. The need for translation has been apparent since the earliest days of human interaction, whether it be for emotional, trade, or survival purposes. The demand for translation services has continued to develop and is now more vital than ever. The word translation comes from a Latin term which means to bring or carry across. It is known that translation was carried out as early as the Mesopotamian era when the Sumerian poem Gilgamesh was translated into ancient languages. This dates back to around the second millennium BC. Other ancient translated works include those carried out by Buddhist monks who translated Indian documents into Chinese. In later periods, ancient Greek texts were also translated by Roman poets. The need for translation became greater with the development of religious texts and spiritual theories. As religion developed, the desire to spread the word and encourage faith means that religious texts needed to be available in multiple languages. It is said that the first significant translation in the Western world was of the Hebrew Bible in the 3rd century BC. Jewish people who had forgotten Hebrew needed it to be translated into Greek. So 70 translators were commissioned to complete the project, which was named as Septuagint. This text is therefore often referred to the Greek Old Testament, and this became the basis for future translations of the Bible in multiple languages. The two other major translations of the Bible were the Jakul Wujek Bible in Polish, 1535, and the King James Bible in English, 1604 till 1611. The Bible was also translated into Dutch, French, Spanish, Czech, and Slovenian. The finest of all was the Wycliffe Bible, 1582 to 1584, named after John Wycliffe, the theologian who translated the Bible from Latin to English. The first fine translations into English were produced by Geoffrey Chaucer in the 14th century. Chaucer founded an English poetic tradition based on translations or adaptations of literary works in Latin and French. A fine work of English prose was Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur, 1485, a free translation of Arthurian romances with legendary King Arthur and his companions. A new discipline called translation studies appeared in the second half of the 20th century. The term translation studies was coined by James S. Holmes, an American Dutch poet and translator of poetry, in his seminal paper, The Name and Nature of Translation Studies, in 1972. Following on from the Industrial Revolution, the economy developed rapidly and evolved into a machine with the potential for global success. New machinery allowed for swifter production of text and business-related materials, and this means that more time could be invested in evolving a company and translating material to enter foreign markets. The internet has revolutionized the ability to access, translate, and understand text and documents from all over the world, whether they be contemporary or historical pieces. Crucially, the need to understand the culture of the original country and that of the target audience is further enhanced by modern tools and practices. Although some instant translation services are capable only of metaphase translation, which means literal word-for-word translation, specialist firms, platforms, and translators are able to translate text and spoken words into multiple languages whilst observing the relevance and culture of the target receiver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandeep. Thank you.
We can have the next one, Vasudhara.
Okay, sure, ma'am. We move over to our next participant, Vartika Upadhyay. Vartika, are you here? Vartika Upadhyay? Vartika, is Vartika here? If not, we move over to Priya Jha. Priya, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Priya?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Yes. So Priya, who is a student from Jamshedpur Women's College, Jamshedpur, and the topic of her paper is A New Life to the Ancient Female Voice, a study of Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey. Over to you, Priya.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you to the chairperson, Mrs. Vijaya, ma'am. Thank you so much, Karim City College, for giving me this opportunity. So my title of the paper is A New Life to the Ancient Female Voice, a study of Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey. Every translation is a new interpretation of the text. A translator is both interpreter of somebody else's word and also a creative representative, striving hard to convey the excitement and euphoria of studying very ancient cultures. And this complex layered literature is a way that makes it both different from our culture and also totally relatable. Renowned classicist female translator from ancient Greek and Roman literature, Emily Wilson tries and teases out the ways that the ancient text, ancient catastrophe, has all the wonderful richness and complexity of ideas and of language. She uses her own poetic skill as well as her scholarly skills to try and bring a new poem to life in a very different literary and social way. This version of Odyssey have a range of different literary poetic goals. We need a new translation because we need constantly to be reassessing the text. Wilson says Odysseus is somebody who has left home, gone to a war, come back from a war. She emphasizes on the ancient societies, ancient works of literature are both very alienated, very remote, and also very much connected to our world today. There are many translators who can decipher the original text largely. There are plenty of modification, but the peculiarity lies in the work of Emily Wilson. She brings the blank words a modern pace and a lingo that doesn't saturate the virtue of its line. We generally find the translation longer than the original text, but Wilson chose to write within this difficult constraint. We do realize in the poem that women weren't very substantial in the olden days. Wilson dealing with the female characters are magnificent. She firmly believes that is still upside how her work has been proposed. Wilson, as a prominent female translator, focuses on the gender positions in her work. The translation of Emily Wilson also imposes effort on the epic narrative style of the poem. It is a perfect example of creative translation. Emily Wilson allows herself some creative freedom with Homer's formulaic phrases. Emily Wilson's translation is a constant alert to the cost of Odysseus' homecoming. Wilson is more attentive to the poem's fullness and its complexities. Her translation uses less repetitions than others. She uses repetition in order to give readers a flavor. This marks the striking feature of her translation. Wilson's choice of terms are very ethical and literary. Wilson removes Odysseus from antiquities. There were near about 70 and above translations of the Odyssey in various languages, but none other than Emily Wilson was able to produce such a versatile English translation. Wilson's version is so distinct from actual version that a retelling doesn't appear precisely necessary. Furthermore, Wilson has the virtue of consistency in her selection. Certainly, Emily Wilson has come by Homer. The elementary substance and memos are excellent. Emily Wilson's Odyssey is loved for its diversity and hence it is a delight to read. Therefore, the translation of the text is significant and needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you. Vijaya ma'am, do we move over to our next presenter? We move on then to Lubna Nasheed, who is an independent researcher based in Jamshedpur, and the topic of her is Of Pritam, Translation and Reflection. I invite Lubna Nasheed to present her paper.
Hello. Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, Vijaya ma'am, Neha ma'am, Bashu ma'am, and everyone present here. My paper is entitled Of Pritam, Translation and Reflection. Amrita Pritam's writings are window to her life, both personal and political. She wrote openly of romance, women's psychology, as well as political disruption and partition ailment. She created timeless classic echoing of bold revolution and reverberating emotions. Amrita Pritam, though, belonged to Punjab, she was for entire India. There was and there is necessity of translating her works into English for the humblest attempt to introduce her work to global audience. An effective translation measures in the intensity having been felt of the words of the writer and how sincerely it has been digested with the essence of particular writing and then reproduced. The complete involvement of the translator in the process of translation is important. Amrita Pritam's writings not only are a reflection of a part of geographical land and its culture, but also is a memoir of her own musings. Amrita migrated to India with the memories of sufferings experienced by her and poured out her experience as a contribution to the gamut of literature related to partition and rupture. Uh, the catastrophe of partition, which apart from other ignominies and mortifications involved, is a distressing infringement of humankind, especially on the scale of apathy. Amrita Pritam's Ode to Varisha captures the riots and pandemonium caused due to partition. Into its English version, it has been translated by Nirupama Dutt, and here she says, Varisha, I call out to you today to rise from your grave. Rise and open a new page of the immortal book of love. Here, reference to Heer has been made, who had once enticed Varisha to write on atrocities out on women folk. Amrita draws parallelism with the cries of millions of women painting the horrific picture of partition where corpses and blood have become substitute to the water of Chenab. Written a few months after the partition, the poem became a symbol of catastrophe on both sides of the fragmented land. In similar context of conflict and disruption of values and political indulgences into synchrony of human existence, a poem from collection Existence, which has been translated by Mahendra Kulashrestha in collaboration with the poet herself, entitled Power, she writes, a factory of war, the chimney emits thick cloud of human breath, and God, a supplier of fresh stocks of flesh. And the other aspect of Amrita's life was the way she embraced truth. Whatever she experienced, she recorded in her writings. She has woven an indigenous mass of personal experience into texture of her writings. She gifted to Imrose the ultimate resonance of poetic artistry, Main Tenu Phir Milangi, celebrating her constant companion in solitude and vibrance. In translation by Nirupama Dutt, it reads, I will meet you yet again, how and where, I know not. Perhaps I will become a figment of your imagination, and maybe, spreading myself in a mysterious line on your canvas, I'll keep gazing at you. In Pritam's poetry, one quest for liberation and self-realization are actively tied to her identity as woman. She confesses of exploiting traditional poetic forms, rigid use of rhymes, and advocates the presence of emotions in a poetic work that should determine its form. The ashtray, smoke, and momentary fire motif have been repeated in several poems, making evident the rebellious soul imbibing disillusionment and detachment. Therefore, I shall conclude by saying that Amrita Pritam has reached out to non-Punjabi readers due to the enterprise of translating her works undertaken. The translations therefore transmits a reflection of Pritam and her existence, which would have otherwise remained cocooned within specificity. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lubna. That was a very compact presentation. And we move over to our next presenter, who is Pooja Patro from Jamshedpur Women's College. Do we have Pooja Patro here? Pooja Patro, are you here? If not, we go ahead and we call upon Riya Banerjee from ABM College, Jamshedpur. Riya Banerjee, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
So Riya is, the title of Riya's paper is Meghduta Translated, Kalidasa's Nature and language in English dress. Ria, I call upon you to present your paper and to kindly maintain the time limit. Over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon, teachers. Today's topic is Meghdut translated Kalidas Nature and Language in English Dress. Meghdut by Kalidas is a great poem of affection in classical Indian literature. Meghdut is one of the masterpieces of Sanskrit language and was composed by the court poet Kalidas before AD 634 in northern India. A poem of 120 stanzas, it is one of Kalidas' famous works, divided into two parts, Purva Megha and Uttara Megha. It recounts how a Yaksha, a subject of King Kubera, after being exiled for a year to central India for neglecting his duties, convinces a passing cloud to take a message to his wife at Alaka and Mount Kailasa in the Himalaya mountains. The Yaksha accomplishes this by describing the many beautiful sights the cloud will see on its northward course to city of Alaka, where his wife awaits his return. The poem is written in unrhymed stanzas for 4 lines in the slow-moving Mandrakrata measure. Many translations exist generally in the style of their period, some being designed to help Sanskrit students understand the grammar and vocabulary of Kalidas, elevated and harmonious languages. The work here adopts the 1912 Hull Surge text and uses 5-line stanzas of rhymed pentameter to render the simple magnificence of poetry, while remaining faithful to prose sense. The few occasions where Colin John Holcomb interpretation differ from those of previous translators, or he had been unable to fully encompass the meaning in a particular stanza, are noted in appendix, which also contains short treatment of metrical issues. Translating classical Sanskrit poetry for a contemporary audience faces 3 obstacles: the long and the audience and quantitative nature of the words, the elevated diction and impersonal style, and intermingling of Indian religion, mythology, and natural world in English remotely as reassembles the Mandrakrata meter, and translator must either give up regular forms and allow stanzas to expand to individual content, probably employing prose on free words of some sort, use of stanzas of some recognized English stanza compressing meaning in 4 relatively short lines, or employ a traditional English verse line in an ampler stanza form. True free verse may indeed be moving and beautiful, but employs an adroit phrasing intended to convey nuisance of feeling in everyday speech. Though stable changes in syntax and word arrangement are phrasing that has nothing to do with traditional meter. In English, there is only one line with beauty, emotional power, flexibility, and wealth of precedent to serviceable, and that is iambic pentameter. I have therefore option 3 developed a slow-moving iambic pentameter in stanzas of 5 lines holding together a free use of tense and sometimes word order by introduce A, B, X, B, A rhyme scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. We move over. Vijaya ma'am, would you like to offer your...
Yes, sorry, my electricity went off. So
No,
that's
ma'am, no
why,
issues.
yeah. All right, you can invite the next one, please.
Okay, sure, ma'am. So our next speaker is our very own student, Shrishti Kumari from the Department of English, Karim City College, Jamshedpur. And the topic of her paper is investigating the diverse possible approaches in the linguistic study of translated literary texts. So Shrishti, over to you. You have to unmute yourself and try to keep the time limit.
A very good afternoon to respected professors, and as the name of my paper is Investigating the Diverse Possible Approaches in the Linguistic Study of Translated Literary Texts. Firstly, I would like to bring out the difference between translation and literature. Differentiating between translation and literature is one of the striking views that we frequently find in the recent studies in literary translations. Some scholars regard literature as original work in art and creation. On the other hand, others see translation as a mechanic task, a craft that lacks both originality and creativity. In effect, a translator's task is very similar to that of a writer. His effort is not less than that of writer's efforts. As a matter of fact, a translator's work is harder than that of a writer. Therefore, the discrimination is baseless. Like literary work, translation is creation. New insights into retranslation and indirect translation hypothesis. The retranslation hypothesis is one of the issues of retranslation theory raised in the paper by Marlis Prinzel in connection with a number of other universals of translation. That includes normalization of literary works in translation. One of the innovative features of her paper is that she does not compare a first and subsequent translation, she compares a first and subsequent translation mutually. Prinzel investigates how translators handle the neologisms of the original and how they try to retain the stylistic characteristics of the source text. The degree of originality of the neologisms in both source and target text is determined by using corpus linguistic methods. The study reveals that none of the translators between 1924 and 2000 and between 2012 managed to retain the level of creativity present in the source text, and on the resort to standardizing translation strategies at the same time undermining the retranslation hypothesis. Technically speaking, an indirect translation of a literary work, that is, the translation of a source text via a first translation into a third language, also resorts under the general umbrella of retranslation. The characteristics of indirect translation, however, differ significantly from retranslation proper, as the objectives of both types of translation are almost diametrically opposed. Whereas a retranslator generally aims at creating added value by improving on an earlier translation, an indirect translation is not directed towards the source text and runs the risk of weakening the fidelity of the translation even more than was that in the first case. The third important area is the representation of speech and the universals of translation. The linguistic properties of translated texts tend to differ in a systematic way, either from their source texts or from comparative non-translated texts in the same language, and that these differences occur irrespective of the language, pair, culture, time, or text type. Most of the research on translation universals have been corpus linguistic, and proposed hypotheses have been both empirically supported and criticized. One intensively investigated universal hypothesis is the normalization, according to which translated texts are typically more scrutinized than non-translated texts, so that they, for example, entail less linguistic variation and more standard or rely more on conventional means of expression instead of unconventional ones. In other words, the tendencies predicted by the hypothesis of translation universals are not exclusive for translation, but also occur in other forms of mediated discourse. In conclusion, I would like to say every translation is an interpretative act as well as a creative one. Translators read the original piece and try to work out what it is doing. They are constantly making choices about which elements of a text to preserve and foreground and which to sacrifice. One of the key challenges of literary translation is the need to balance staying faithful to the original work with the need to create something unique and distinctive that will evoke the same feeling and responses as the original one. Thank you.
Sister, you are very much right that translation is like original work and creativity. So thank you very much. Next one, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. So we move over to our next presenter, who is Diksha Bharti, who is a postgraduate student from the Department of English and Cultural Studies, Punjab University, Chandigarh. And the title of Diksha's paper is Language as a Site of Political Contestation with reference to Manto's work. Diksha, over to you. Please try to keep the time limit.
Sure, ma'am. Good afternoon to everybody present over here. The title of my paper is Language as a Site of Contestation with reference to Manto's work. Saadat Hasan Manto, a man variously identified as controversial, cynical, troubled, and even arrogant, has managed to become one of the most sought after 20th century literary voices to emerge out of the Indian subcontinent. The style of his stories has always been the talk of the town, sometimes due to his choice, due to his wide arena of themes and sub-themes, and sometimes due to his explicit language. His stories focus on the marginalized in society, prostitutes, pimps, criminals, deviants. The stark truthfulness and the sardonic humor with which they are portrayed unmask the hypocrisy and the cant of middle-class pretensions. He touches the lives of the common man and his issues through a knife stance in an unlabored way, and yet it offends us in numerous unnatural ways. He serves our actions to us in a platter, yet we detest it in the first look and then gradually accepts it as our reality. In the words of Manto, अगर आप इन अफसानों को बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकते तो इसका मतलब है कि जमाना ही नाकाबिले बर्दाश्त है. Manto played a formative role in the development of the Urdu short story, along with Rajinder Singh Bedi and Krishan Chandra, who had begun to write in the 1930s. Premchand has earlier brought Urdu fiction out of the unreal realms of fantasy and romance. Manto and his contemporaries, such as his dear friend Ismat Chugtai, who he fondly referred as Ismat Appa, and Ahmad Nadeem Kazmi, further developed this trend towards realistic representation, exploring the truth of human real existence with keen psychological insight and down-to-earth realism. With the partition of the Indian subcontinent in 1947, Pakistan held an artificial claim on Urdu. Urdu was not the language of any part of what would become the territory of Pakistan, but its many Persian and Arabic borrowings. It was imported as a way for the new state to realize its Islamic aims. Manto and Urdu, not just language, but the whole cultural macrocosm goes hand in hand. His literary illusions require a cultural and specifically literary knowledge of the Urdu tradition that goes beyond reductive definitions of the Urdu. Instead, the tropes that Manto presents in his works represent illusions available to the socio-culturally aware reader, regardless of whether the reader accesses the text in Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi, or even English. On one level, translating Saadat Hasan Manto into English is not a very difficult task. He presents the facts as they are, captures the reader's attention, pays careful attention to the structure of the text, especially to the ending, and uses each detail with economy and brevity. As a storyteller, he never goes astray from the complexity of the lived experience so as to find an easy refuge in political posturing or moral sermonizing. That is why the style of his best stories, devoid of all metaphoric axis and sentimental inflections, is always precise, raw, bare-boned, and conversational. Atish Tazir, grandson of the stalwart of Urdu, M.D. Tazir, chose English as a language for his translation because of its impartiality and opportunity its literary life offers. It is a strange fact about Indian intellectual life that the road to rediscovering a writer like Manto in the original is bound to run first through English. Tasir, in his introduction to selected short stories of Manto, published in the year 2008, is highly critical of Khalid Hassan's English translation, Bitter Fruit, as he tried to improve upon the writer, but he himself has given too literal a translation, which mar the beauty of the Urdu and dims its light under the usage of direct, flowery English replacements. In the story, Ram Khilwan, Manto has brilliantly shown the innocence of Ram Khilwan through his accent and language structure. When Ram Khilwan speaks in Manto's original, the Mumbai lower-class color of language is dominant. He pronounces the name as Sayyid Shalim Balister, but Taseer simply translates as Sayyid Salim Barrister. Cutting long story short, in the story Boo, translated as smell, he has altogether deleted or might not consider it as important to translate the lines which were necessary to highlight Randhir's social build-up. उसे कोई सामाजिक रूप से बदचलन लड़की और बदचलन औरत का भी अनुभव था जिसे वह बहुत ही रूहानी मानता था. He even sometimes fall into the pitfall of too literal a translation, so much so that it damages the original beauty and leads to devastation of the metaphoric sense. दोनों एक दूसरे में समा गए. They both entered each other. Though his selection of stories remain by and large from each of his themes, but what makes the choice strange is the fact that well-known pieces about the partition, like Gurmukh Singh Ki Wasiyat and Shahai, find no place in the volume. He doesn't, for example, include 1919 Ki Ek Baat, a difficult and bleak tale in which Manto seems to conclude that despite the presence of Gandhi, the foolish and the brutal characterized every instance of a nationalist past. He also sometimes dismembers and scrambles their structures. In the story Ram Khilwan, during the introductory paragraph, Manto touches the aesthetic codes by writing, मुफलसी के उस जमाने में मेरे सिर्फ इतने कपड़े थे जो बमुश्किल 6-7 दिन तक मेरी वाजादरी कायम रख सकते थे. To which Taseer abruptly suffices it as, I had just enough clothes for 5 to 6 days. Words like Hajabarth have been into salwar, not even shalwar. Coming to the conclusion, it is therefore important to translate his stories with care in order to reveal how they are constructed out of a complex variety of strong voices. Voices of protest and anguish, mockery and nostalgia, mourning and longing. Voices which clash against each other and jostle for a hearing. His stories are of the past, present, and will be of the future. And in his own words, it is also possible that Saadat Hasan dies, but Manto remains alive, and he shall remain alive forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful presentation.
Yeah.
Over to Vijaya ma'am.
Yeah. Diksha, very insightful paper. Congratulations.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next one, please.
Yes, we move ahead to our next presenter, who is Anagha KS, who is a student from the Department of English, MES College, Kerala. And the topic of her paper is film subtitling with special reference to South Indian movies.
Thank you.
Over to you, Anagha.
Yeah, can you see my presentation?
Yes, your PPT is visible. There is a little problem with your audio, I guess. Try speaking a little louder.
Thank you. Hello?
You are not audible. At my end, your voice is breaking. Yes?
No sound. Sound problem is there.
Anagha, if you want, we can move on to the next presenter and you can join once again. You can try logging out and logging in once again. In the meantime, we can call upon the next presenter. Can we do that? Please check your sound.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So while Anagha is preparing herself, we move over to our next presenter, Sushma Kumari. Do we have Sushma Kumari here? Do we have Sushma Kumari here? Sushma Kumari, are you here? If not, we move ahead to Ankita Modak. Ankita Modak, who is a faculty in the Department of English, Karim City College. And the topic of her paper is Translations and Cinema. Ankita? Ankita Modak?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Am I
Yes,
audible,
good
ma'am?
afternoon. Ankita, you have a time of 4 minutes. Thank you. Over to you. You are not audible, Ankita.
Am I audible, ma'am? Hello.
Yes,
Yeah,
now you are.
you are audible.
There is some problem. I want to present my slides actually.
If there is a problem, you can just give an oral presentation. That is all right. Because we do not have a lot of time. We have some other participants who are unable to present in their last sessions. They are also here today. So if there is a technical issue, kindly just do an oral presentation.
Okay, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Thanks to the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Today, I'm going to talk on the topic translation and cinema in the era of globalization. I want to present few slides along with my statement. I hope that my slides are visible. I will focus on some of the major points related to film translation. So, cinemas or films are enjoyed by a wide range of audience around the globe, with many films produced by India and English-speaking countries are distributed worldwide, which demands film translation. Since the 1940s, the translation process had made up with varying degrees of success. The rise of the internet has set up a worldwide market for the translation services, which has facilitated language localization. Films production is a huge business, and several cities and countries like Los Angeles, New York, Canada, London, and India are running well in this sector. English is a universal or world language, but for a wider audience reach, it is better for the films to be in language spoken in the target territories so that the films can be released for a global audience. On the best ways to have films in different languages is through audiovisual translation. This is done by language service providers. The abbreviated form is LSPS, with the professional capacity and training to provide translation services. The process of translating a film is complex and tedious. The client may want to use subtitles or they want the movie dubbed into several languages if the film is distributed for international release. The decision as to which film translation mode to choose is by no means arbitrary and depends on several factors such as political, historical circumstances, tradition, the techniques to which the audience is accustomed, economical, ideological, as well as the status of both the target and the source culture in the global context. I will just elaborate the major modes of film translation: subtitling and dubbing. Each of them interferes the original text of the different extent. There are many benefits of subtitling and dubbing. They are the benefits of dubbing. Dubbing increases a movie appeal to a mainstream audience. Movie localization is vital to the acceptance of the target audience of dubbed content. In any form, humor is difficult to translate. And the benefits of subtitling is this method is more cost effective for the producers. It provides authenticity to the film. The delivery of the film's plot is better. So dubbing is known to be the method that modifies the source text to a large extent and thus makes it familiar to the target audience through
Domestication. It is a domesticating strategy which neutralizes foreign elements of the source text and thus privileges the target culture. Whereas subtitling is supplying a translation of spoken source language dialogue into the target language in a synchronized caption, it alters the source text to the language the least possible extent and enables the target audience to aware of its foreignness. Subtitling is a foreignizing strategy since it stresses the foreign nature of a film and it is a source culture bound translation. So each country has a different requirement of translating a film and subscribe to one of the two major modes as far as cinema translation is concerned, or sometimes to a third minor mode which is known as voiceover in the case of television translation. Most films shown internationally come from countries such as the United Kingdom, United States, India, and many more. In these countries, whatever foreign films shown in their theaters use subtitles or dubbing. In the United Kingdom, most of the imported films shown are from United States. Using subtitles is the preferred method for smaller territories. Some countries that prefer to use subtitles are Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, Portugal, Greece, Denmark, Finland, and Belgium. And coming next to the dubbing. Lip-sync or dubbing is another way to do film translation. It involves the replacement of the original or the source audio track with recorded dialogue in another language. Spain, Italy, Germany, Hungary, Bulgaria, Slovakia, and France are the territories where dubbing is favored. Dubbing is more popular where the population is about 50 million or more. Poland uses voiceovers because it is too costly for their market to have their films dubbed. Next, coming to the importance of the film translation worldwide. Today, translation agencies play a key role in many areas of commerce. It takes a lot of hard work and dedication to be a translator for films. Today, the technological revolution is continuing to experience. The globalization has made the entire planet into an audience for all works. That is why the translator play a key role when it comes to conveying the right message without creating confusion or controversy. The translator have to take into consideration the culture of target markets to ensure that no traditions and taboos are violated, the colloquialism are observed, and that the dialogue is presented accurately in the target language. With the growing influence of contemporary films and video delivery systems, including the internet, the ease with which films can be viewed across national, cultural, and linguistic borders has increased dramatically. Further, an emerging global cinema has been recognized as the intersection of the both spectators and film producers. A cinema that is increasingly multilingual and multicultural, methods of language and cultural translation are becoming more important to a broader range of people. We are having a kind of shortcomings of the subtitling and dubbing. Subtitling slow down the viewers. It also has
Ankita, I'm sorry for intruding, but you will have to wrap up your presentation.
Yes, ma'am, I'm
Please conclude.
concluding. Yes, ma'am. Subtitles have to work on the limited space and the production time increases. This all are the demerits of subtitling. Coming to the demerits of dubbing, choice of voice over the actors and syncing of the voice of the actors. While dubbing may be a better option, but it is also having some kinds of shortcomings. Within the broader field of intercultural communication, the study of delivery of international cinema focuses especially on the process of mediated global communication, cultural identity, media globalization, cultural or language translation, and multimedia learning. Filmmakers and producers look for more effective methods to globalize their audiovisual content. The process of translation is seen as a cross-cultural transfer as a mutual relationship between the source and the target cultures are important as it will also influence the translating process. That's all. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ankita, your topic was very interesting and it is very close to my heart also.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, ma'am.
yeah, we can have the next one, please.
Yes. So we move back to Anagha, who I believe is ready now. And so Anagha, you are invited to present your paper, Film Subtitling, with special reference to South Indian movies.
Can you?
No, the same problem with your audio. We are unable to hear you.
Hear me?
If you are using a headset, try taking it out. Because headsets sometimes they're not compatible and they don't work. So try speaking without a headset.
Hello.
Not audible.
Can you hear?
No, we cannot hear you. We cannot hear you. What we can do is you can again test your audio. In the meanwhile, we will have you again. In the meantime, we will invite Vimal Matthew, who is here from the last session. He could not present his paper in the last session. So Vimal is here, and Vimal's topic is, second, I will check Vimal's topic. And Vimal's topic is theoretical overview of film translation, a closer look on relevance theory and Newmark's translation theory. So Anagha, while in the meantime you check out your sound settings, we will have Vimal's presentation. Yes, Vimal, all yours. Please adhere to the time limit.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
It's been some rain and stuff going on here, so I think it will be better to stick to the audio. And I have data constraints too. Sorry
Yeah,
for that.
no issues.
Okay. So my research paper is titled as Theoretical Approach to Film Translation, a closer look at Newmark's communication theory and relevance theory. Recently,
Vimal, could you try being a little louder? Your voice was fine initially, but then it is sounding very soft now. A little closer to microphone.
Recently, more and more attention has been paid to translation of film. But because of its own characteristics, there is a dispute about what strategies or theories should be applied to translation of film. My paper hence will be dealing with the film translator two theories, namely Newmark translation theory and relevance theory. Film, of course, belongs to the category of literary works, but they are special literary works with its own characteristics. 5 characteristics of film can be identified as they are being listened or spoken, comprehensive, instant, popularity, and there is no chance for giving any kind of explanations or notes. So based on such characteristics, some difficulties would be bound to be caused when an audience watch overseas films. So methods have been found to overcome this. This is where communication and translation theories like Newmark's theory and relevance theory can be applied to the film translation. Now to our first theory, that is Newmark's translation theory. Newmark Peter is one of the most outstanding translation theorists in the contemporary Britain. He points out that only semantic translation and communicative translation achieve accurate and smooth translation. Semantic translation emphasizes language and content of the original source language to the target language. Hence, the translation will try to be as close to the original. Originally used in translation of literature, science, and technology, it can also be used in case of film translation, especially in the translation of film title and film dialogues. While the communicative translation aims at making translation affect target language readers in the same way as the original text to the source language readers, the focus here is to convey information in the language, culture, and pragmatic style of the target language rather than just copying the original text faithfully. This too can be used in the translation of film titles and dialogues. Thus, although Newmark's translation theory cannot be applied much in subtitle translation, it can be better applied in translation of other elements of film like film titles and dialogues. Now I will go to the second theory, that is the relevance theory. Now coming to the second theory, that is the relevance theory, it states that in the process of communication, the addresser and the addressee need not consider the problem of cooperation because communication depends upon relevance. Sperber and Wilson are the people behind this theory. Simply, the central claim of relevance theory is that expectation of relevance raised by an utterance are precise enough and predictable enough to guide the hearer towards the speaker's meaning. Relevance theory can be applied in film translation too, especially when it comes to the translation of subtitles. Subtitle translation refers to the use of one language to express another language and try the best to make it resemble to the original utterance, making the target language audience understand the original as quickly as possible. When do subtitling? Subtitler should consider the idea which is most relevant to explain the original text. Therefore, the target language audience can reproduce the ideas quickly based on the relevance principle. Subtitle translation makes intentions and expectations meet. In order to make the communication successful, what the subtitler must do is to make his intentions meet the audience expectations. A subtitler can judge relevance based on three factors, that is contextual relevance, social context and situational context of a special movie scene or a dialogue or whatever it is, then cultural relevance of a movie scene or dialogue, and the recipient relevance, that is he has to keep in mind how it is going to act on the target audience, a particular scene or a dialogue from the movie. So based on the judgment he is done, he can employ various tools into the subtitle translation like omission of words and phrases from the source text, then amplification of words or phrases from the source text, or even the domestication of the words or phrases from the source text to the target text in target audience language. And while the process of subtitling, one should also keep in mind the economic principle, that is that only lesser or fewer words should be used in order to convey a message, because a subtitle is something that is flashed through the screen, and within the few words the target audience should have the proper idea what the source text actually meant. Hence one can see that by applying the principles and strategies of these two communication principles into various elements of movies like film title, dialogues and subtitles, one can have a systematic approach to translation of film. Coming to the conclusion, although it is seen that these systems are efficiently used in film markets like that of Chinese and Russian, Indian films still lack their systematic approach to the foreign film translation. Even the film titles translated into Indian context are rather laughable and funny enough, unfortunately. Hence, we should try to systematically translate the foreign films by use of translation like. Thank you. That is the end of my presentation.
Vimal, your paper was very technical, but it was very, very clear. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is the last call for all those presenters who may be here and who have failed to make their presentations in the earlier session. So I tried tracing you all through the schedule that we had, but I could not find out your names. So if you are here under another ID, if you have joined from another ID and you want to make a presentation, kindly drop your name in the chat box. In the meantime, we will go over to our last presenter, that is Anagha, if she is ready to make her presentation. Anagha, the platform is all yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you are more audible now.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear the presentation? Can you see the presentation?
Not very clear.
Is it audible?
Yes, it is.
Can you see the presentation? Good afternoon.
Anagha, you are not audible.
Can we? Hello.
Anagha, you start without presentation. Verbally, you start.
Anagha, an oral presentation.
Me?
Technical problem is there.
Yes, there are audible issues. So I believe that it will be difficult, Anagha, to make your presentation. We understand that you are ready for presentation, but your voice is unable to reach us. So these are technical difficulties. We hope that we will have a written document from you soon. I would request our chairperson, Vijay Sharma, to kindly offer our chairperson's comments and to conclude the session. Over to you, Vijay, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Vasudhara. There are no more people are there? Nobody else is there from the previous one also? Okay, okay.
No, there are just I made a last call. There is nobody else
Yeah.
interested
Once,
in making a
once again, please ask. Once again, just inquire in case somebody is there.
Yes. If there is here who has joined this session and who intends to make a presentation because they might have missed their particular technical sessions, you're invited to drop in your names in the chat box so we can call you. There were 3 presenters who did not turn up, Vartika, Pooja Patro, and Sushma Kumari. 3 presenters today did not turn up. And from the presentation, we just had one presentation that was from Vimal Matthew.
Vasudhara, I would like to add.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Neha, ma'am, you have to unmute.
So I would like to add one name, those who have missed, their presentation in previous technical session, and that is Anisha Mishra. I have mentioned on chat box. So if she is around, she can also present. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to provide certificate and all.
No, ma'am, you are not around. Nobody has presented from the session. We just had Vimal Matthew who was presenting, and there was nobody else from the previous session who has turned up.
Yes.
So I guess we can conclude.
Yeah, Saket had informed, but if they have opted out, we cannot help it.
We cannot do anything about it. So there was a last call for them. Yes, Anagha, that is okay. We saw that you had a slide ready and you were willing to present, but then there were some technical issues, audibility issues. It is fine. It is fine. Yes, Vijaya ma'am, we invite you.
Okay, okay, thank you. Technology is a help. At the same time, we can see the problems related to this. And today, especially, so many hurdles came because of technology. My side, electricity suddenly went off, and I have to switch over to mobile. Then again, it came back. And so many of you are not able to present your paper. Like Anagha, she tried many times, she couldn't do it. And many times audio was not very clear. Even our side, audio was not very clear sometimes, but we can't help these things. Coming to the session, translation is tough work. It is a bridge between the two cultures, and translator has to bring both the cultures together. That is the job of the translator. And they have to read between the lines. They have to go deep into the text. He or she, whoever is translating, has to catch the music of the language of the text, source text. Because unless you know the music of the text or music of the source language, you cannot really get the essence of the work. And when we are translating, we have to see the silence of the text, which is very, very important. Because what we see on the surface, it is just like seeing the tip of the iceberg. The text has so much inside, which we have to decipher as a translator. And coming to the papers, different papers, I know all of you have taken great pains to write your research paper. Writing research paper is not easy work. It takes lots of time, lots of energy, and lots of research work. Then only you can prepare a research paper, you can write a research paper. And all of you have done hard work that I can see. So congratulations to all of you. Although I am not able to comment on individual paper because due to the constraint of the time and technology both. And one or two papers I couldn't hear properly because my side problem was there. At the same time, you have done excellent work. And I can see that all of you are very hardworking. And it is a matter of courage to come to the platform and present your research paper, especially the students, the young people, unexperienced people. When they come, it is really a courageous work. And you have taken that step. So I'm very happy about that. And a special congratulations I like to give to Karim City College for such an excellent international webinar. Because of that, we are here together, virtually maybe, but we are here, we are seeing each other, we are hearing each other. So a big congratulations to Karim City College. And thank you for inviting me for this session, chairing the session. And my special thanks goes to Professor Yahya Ibrahim and Dr. Neha Tiwari and Dr. Vasudhara Roy. And I will congratulate and thank you, Vasudhara, especially for hosting the session with enthusiasm and with zest. And once again, I'd like to thank all of you and my sincere best wishes for your future endeavors. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Vijaya ma'am. I would request Neha ma'am to formally offer a vote of thanks and bring the session to a close.
Thank you so much, Vijay ma'am, for being a part of this session, last session, which was a quite important one for us because many young scholars were trying their hand in the research area and in presenting paper. So to have you as the chairperson is a bliss because we can always be formal and informal at the same time. So thank you so much to all the participants who have who have taken the time, taken a task, and presented their paper so well. Now, time and technical glitches, these are going to be a part of our life, in the coming days, because I believe at least 1 year we have to be like this only in a virtual space. So we need to understand, we need to learn how to tackle it, and we are learning definitely. Thank you so much once again. And of course, my colleague Basudhara, she has always been very enthusiastic for all kind of academic activities. And she has taken up time, and being at home with 2 small kids and then handling all these things are not easy task. So yes, she deserves special mention, special thanks. Saket, I can see you are here. So thank you to you as well in organizing the entire conference and handling so many things, with so much competence. Thank you to the students of Karim City College, especially. I can see Srishti is around. So they have again, yes, whatever we have taught, you have actually tried to exercise it, and that's something which is very good. Saket, can you hear?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yes.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
जी मैं भी सुन रहा हूँ सर भी
चलिए तो आपको भी धन्यवाद दे दिया जाए.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you, Vijay ma'am.
Good. Okay, so that with this note, because we have to now we have around 4 o'clock valedictory section, and we have to prepare for that. So we will take a break, but definitely I invite all the paper presenters and people who are here in this session to join us at 4 p.m. again. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity, Ayya sir, to be together.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. So all of us, we meet once again at 4 p.m. Thank you very much for joining in this session. We meet you all once again at 4 p.m. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Vasu. Saket.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye, ma'am.